and they really didn't like the new commando philosophy.
The regular army were doing their best to get us disbanded. They hated us, some of them. We were a nuisance.
And because our standards were so high, we'd creamed off the best of the people in the regiments. And in fact, a lot of COs refused to allow people to volunteer.
This resistance by the regular army certainly got Churchill's back up.
What I have here is a letter he wrote to the Secretary of State for War. And he says, "I hear that the whole position of the commandos is being questioned. They've been told no more recruiting and that their future is in the melting pot." Says he feels very strongly about this. Says the defeat of France by Germany was accomplished by an incredibly small number of highly equipped elite, while the dull mass of the German army came on behind. And then here, for every reason, therefore, we must develop the commando idea. Pretty clear cut.
As 1941 drew to a close, Japan joined the war, and the Royal Navy had to send a fleet to the Far East. So there was even less to hold the Tirpitz at bay. What's more, we were losing the Battle of the Atlantic. We were losing in North Africa, and London was in ruins. So if Churchill's commandos really could smash up Saint-Nazaire, it might give a sense back home that Britain wasn't finished just yet.
Everywhere almost we were on retreat, and people were really becoming negative, and Churchill wanted something which would be successful aggression.
The plan to destroy the 1,500-ton dockgate was codenamed Operation Chariot, and it was certainly bold.
The commandos would get hold of a couple of destroyers from somewhere and sail them from Cornwall over to western France. Now one of these destroyers would be filled with explosives. And while the RAF distracted the Germans with a bombing raid over Saint-Nazaire, they would somehow sneak it up the estuary without being seen by anyone in the gun emplacements here, 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 and here, or by anyone with a searchlight here, 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 and here. And then, to see what happens next, we have to turn to the actual model built to plan the raid. The destroyer, with the explosives in it, would ram the dock gates here, and the commandos would jump off, and right underneath all the guns positioned to protect the U-boat pens here, they'd run around, shooting anything that moved and blowing up anything that didn't. Then, after the destroyer exploded, destroying the lock gate, they'd all meet here at this not at all exposed jetty and get back on the second destroyer, which somehow wouldn't have been blown to pieces while it was hanging around in the estuary for a couple of hours waiting for them to finish. It would then sail back down the estuary, past all the guns, and go home. Right.
The plan was presented to the War Office by Louis Mountbatten, head of the Combined Operations Unit, and unsurprisingly it met resistance. One commander-in-chief was particularly vocal.
I remember he started the meeting by saying, "Well, Dickie, old cock, if you're prepared to lose all your soldiers and all your ships, I suppose you can take on this task, which I regard as absolutely impossible." I said, it's the fact that it is regarded as impossible which makes it possible. The Germans will never think we'll attempt it.
Mountbatten's enthusiasm certainly didn't rub off on the RAF.
You can see here in these Operation Chariot minutes that the powers that be requested a force of about 100 aircraft for the diversionary bombing raid in 3 waves. But on the back, Vice Marshal Saunby says, "I don't agree that such a heavy scale of attack is needed. We want about 20 Whitleys, which are bombers, hanging around overhead, dropping an occasional bomb." And he's backed up by one of his advisors, this chap called Willits, who really says that Operation Chariot can whistle for their 100 bombers. He says Bomber Command can provide no more than 35 aircraft without prejudicing their other commitments.
You might have thought the Navy would be keen, especially since the operation was designed to neutralise the Tirpitz.
But no. The Commander-in-Chief here from Plymouth Command writes, the plan entails the sacrifice of the landing party and endangers 2 valuable ships for a small chance of success. He actually says negligible chance here. There's another guy writing here who says, I'm not hopeful as regards the result of the impact between the destroyer and the lock gates. I think the lock gates will remain partially intact and the destroyer will look silly. If that happens, much of the proposed plan fails.
Eventually, though, the Navy did find one boat. It was called HMS Campbelltown, a clapped-out American World War I destroyer that was on loan to the British. She was not ideal for the job, known for her poor slow-speed manoeuvrability and her large turning circle. But these drawbacks didn't dampen the spirits of the commandos.
I thought we would get away with it, that I would be wounded romantically and a beautiful nurse would look after me in hospital. I was very young.
You're doing all this heavy training and nothing's happening, so very frustrated. So I think when we were finally briefed on the model, I mean, we thought, well, hell, this is going to be something.
We had been trained, both in the dark, blindfolded in the day, in every form of demolition to do with dock demolitions, trains and anything. So when we heard that we were going to blow up the dock installations at Nazaire, I suppose really it was a feeling of elation.
At this stage, people were saying, well, what do you think? To me, you see. And I said, it's going to be a piece of cake. We're going to go in there and knock them for 6, because that reflected the optimistic attitude. We were going to go in there, blow up this bloody dock, and we'll be out.
We had volunteered, after all, for danger. And there did seem an off chance that it was impossible, and therefore it would succeed.
As the commandos prepared on land, the Navy set about the Campbelltown. The old tub would have to sneak past 80 gun emplacements on its way up the Saint-Nazaire estuary, so it had to be disguised, and they only had 12 days to do the work. In the end, they removed 2 funnels and sloped the other 2 backwards, so at a glance it looked a bit like a German destroyer. And then there was the problem of turning it into a time bomb. This job was given to a brilliant young naval officer called Lieutenant Nigel Tibbets. He was a shy chap with a stammer who, when his girlfriend announced that she'd become fond of him, replied, "Well then, I suppose we shall have to get married." However, while he was not desperately confident with women, he was a whiz with explosives, one of the best students the Dartmouth Naval College had ever seen. But even he faced difficulties with how you turn a whole ship into a bomb. The first problem he had was deciding where in the ship to place the explosives. Because you see, if you can imagine, this is the gate to the dock and this is the ship. What's going to happen after it hits? I mean, is it just going to end up here, in which case you want the bomb in the front? Or is it going to rear up, in which case you want the bomb sort of in the middle, toward the bottom? I suppose theoretically it would be possible, if the ship were going fast enough, for it to actually ride right over the top of the gate and end up in the dock itself. I mean, who knew? Day and night, Tibbets struggled with this until he decided on a spot 40 feet back from the prow, low down, next to the keel. Then he had to work out how to set the explosives off. Back then there was no accurate